Hello and welcome to another TLDR Explained video. As we reported in our State of the Union video, President Donald Trump laid out what he saw as an economic triumph, touting low unemployment numbers, high growth, and record-breaking stock market success. In this video, we're going to explain Trump's economy, what these numbers mean, and how they'll impact the election in November.
Hey, Editor Jack here. I just wanted to note that we recorded this video before the stock market crash as a result of the coronavirus. We'll be covering that in a separate video, but just keep in mind that that's happened since this was recorded.
We didn't just choose this topic randomly though. We asked our patrons which topic they want us to make a video on, and this landed in first place. Everyone from $3 and up gets the ability to vote on future video topics. And we're trying to expand our team from 1 full-time employee to 2 and then 3. You can even specifically support our US channel if you want to help us put out more content. If we meet our goals, we'll commit to 2 or even 3 videos a week on this channel. Thank you so much for your continued support. So, is Trump's economy really that strong? Well, in a word, yes. So how do we know that? Well, there are several conventional measures of how well a country's economy is doing. So let's take a look at a few of those. The first measure of an economy is the gross domestic product, or GDP, which is defined as the total value of all final goods and services produced in a country during a given year. This means that when businesses produce a particular good or service, the value of all of those is added together to come up with GDP. We can also look at GDP per capita, or per person, which is the total GDP divided by a country's population. According to the Federal Reserve Economic Data, or FRED, an economic research organization that's part of the Federal Reserve, GDP in 2019 for the United States was over $21 billion and rose steadily all year. But when we take a look at that GDP trend over several years, we see that this may simply be part of a larger pattern, albeit with a slight downturn around the 2008 financial crisis. Another measure of how well the economy is doing is the unemployment rate. Now it's worth noting here that there is a natural unemployment rate. In other words, having unemployment is nothing out of the ordinary. So what is natural unemployment? According to economist Paul Krugman, the natural rate of unemployment varies from country to country. In the United States, for example, the rate has usually been between 4 and 6% since World War II. Now, to be fair, historically, presidents have always taken credit for good economic growth, and likewise suffer politically for bad economic conditions. With this in mind, it's worth looking at the long-term unemployment rate. As you can see, unemployment has been steadily dropping since 2010, which would support the theory that this isn't an accomplishment of Donald Trump or his administration, but part of a larger pattern that's been going on for some time. But remember the natural unemployment rate we mentioned earlier. The thing that makes Trump's unemployment numbers more impressive is that currently, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, unemployment is at 3.6%, below the natural rate of unemployment. The president claims credit for the better than normal unemployment rate, citing deregulation policies that have allowed businesses to thrive. In addition to the country's unemployment, Trump has also touted low unemployment in specific communities, and he does have a point. Unemployment among African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians have dropped to record lows. However, like the total unemployment we mentioned earlier, the numbers among these groups were already going down. Job creation, which is the number of jobs added each month, is another measure used to determine economic growth. This chart shows the rate of change in jobs from 2012 to present. As you can see, since 2012, job creation has fluctuated, but always been positive. To be fair, every president experiences times when the economy doesn't grow as much, and as with economic success, they often bear the responsibility for this economic failure. In fact, presidents have lost re-election campaigns because of failing economies. The best example, albeit extreme, is Herbert Hoover. Hoover was elected president in 1928 after a roaring economic boom had Americans in a state of optimism. However, on October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed, losing 25% of its value in just 2 days. This, combined with the fact that Hoover was largely perceived as uncaring of America's situation because of his policies of non-government interference in the economy, doomed his re-election in 1932. He went on to lose the presidency to Franklin Roosevelt that year. In his State of the Union, President Trump also claimed that the number of people receiving public assistance has declined, and this is one area where President Trump has a point. For example, according to the Department of Agriculture, participation in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, has declined over 20%. This is usually considered a good thing, because it means that more people have jobs that pay well enough that people don't need public assistance anymore. Now, remember the stock market crash we mentioned earlier? Well, that's another way of measuring the success of an economy. The Dow Jones Industry Average, or simply the Dow, measures the performance of the 30 largest companies, including Apple, Boeing, and Microsoft. At the time of writing, the value of the Dow is just under 29,000. However, keep in mind that's relative. Because trading happens every day, the Dow changes literally every day. Now, I know you're asking what this has to do with the Trump economy. Well, if we use this indicator to measure how well the Trump economy is doing, then it's doing very well, as the Dow reached an all-time high as recently as Friday. However, if we look at the numbers of President Obama at the same point in his presidency, we can see they're about the same in terms of growth. So considering everything we've looked at, it's fair to say that the economy is doing quite well. However, as we've said multiple times before, it's possible that it's a continuation of a larger trend. So the question then becomes, how does the economy affect the upcoming election? Well, to answer that question, the only thing we can look at is historic comparisons. Since World War II, only 3 incumbent presidents have lost re-election. Republicans Gerald Ford and George H.W. Bush, and Democrat Jimmy Carter. In all 3 cases, the economy was experiencing a recession. In fact, it's a bit ironic that Jimmy Carter came into office during a recession and yet lost his re-election bid largely because of his own economic downturn. Ronald Reagan in 1980 asked the question, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" to criticize Carter on the economy. And in 1992, Bill Clinton used the slogan, "Is the economy stupid?" to energize his base and attack Bush's economic record.
People that have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, lost their health insurance. What I want you to understand is the national debt is not the only cause of that. It is because America has not invested in its people. It is because we have not grown. It is because we've had 12 years of trickle-down economics. We've gone from 1st to 12th in the world in wages. We've had 4 years where we produced no private sector jobs. Most people are working harder for less money than they were making 10 years ago. It is because we are in the grip of a failed economic theory. And this decision you're about to make better be about what kind of economic theory you want. Not just people saying, "I'm going to go fix it," but what are we going to do? What I think we have to do is invest in American jobs, American education, control American health care costs, and bring the American people together again.
It's fair to say that Americans would generally give presidents a second term unless the economy is not doing well. And it's worth noting that according to a Gallup poll, 61% of Americans say the economy is doing better. Now, this obviously doesn't guarantee a Trump victory in November, but it's certainly an advantage for him. All that being said, and as strong as some of the metrics are for Trump, there's a global sentiment that while GDP, stock markets, and businesses are growing, the average person is being left behind. The Trump economy may look like great news when looking from a macro level, or from the perspective of investors and business owners, but it's not clear that the same is true for the average person. That's because macroeconomic factors, like the ones we've discussed so far, look at a country's national accounts, rather than factors that directly affect every individual. Because of that, data like this can hide the levels of income inequality in a country. Looking at a chart like this one demonstrates that while the share of income going to the top 1% of earners has rocketed from about 10% in the 80s to 20% today, the reality of the bottom 50% has done nearly the opposite. This leaves the top 1% of earners with nearly double the share of total income held by the entire bottom 50%. Or take a look at this graph from the Economic Policy Institute, which shows a growing productivity gap, where workers are becoming more productive than ever, while their compensation largely stagnates. So sure, Trump has had some very good stats when it comes to the economy. It's certainly growing. But the question is if his economy is responsible for all of this, and if it's helping the average American. If you want us to explore this further, and the issue of economic inequality, be sure to like this video and comment below to let us know. As always, thank you very much for watching, and be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when we release new videos. Special thanks to our Patreon backers whose support makes these videos possible.